you have to ask yourself why you're doing this. And because if you can answer that with a smile on your face and just know the answer, like you're in it for the journey. I know, and it sounds super cliche, but it's so right. And that's why it's like an ongoing theme in a lot of my songs is the journey. It's because it's a reminder to myself that no matter what, the best moments are going to be those moments in between the big ones.
My friends, welcome. Today, I am very excited to be joined by the very talented Rob Riccardo in the Mastermind. Rob is a singer and songwriter whose music shares a positive and reflective message with his mindful lyrics. I came across Rob's music on Spotify just about 2 or 3 months ago and instantly gravitated towards the vibe, the message, and just the energy that he's putting out into the world. His new album, The Fire in Me, is out now, and it's incredible. Rob, welcome to the show, my brother.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation, and I've taken a lot from your music, the art that you're putting out there, and I think that there's a lot that we can share with the audience, and it's just an honor for me to be able to play a small role and share what you're doing on this platform that I've got here. First and foremost, it's 7 a.m. here on the East Coast, which means it's 4 a.m. and Pacific time that you're in. Yeah. So and I saw that and I thought maybe it was a scheduling error, but you said no, you're up by this time. Yeah. So I got to hear about that. What's up with the early mornings, and is that the daily routine? It's
my relatively newly committed daily routine. I used to get up quite early when I first moved out here to hike, which is why I usually get up certainly now. But the more and more music I committed to music, the more and more late nights would happen, and not so much because of like gigs and stuff, but that definitely happens. But it's mostly because it's the late hours in the night when I'm chasing those song lyrics down. It becomes 4 a.m. on the other end, so I'd be going to bed while my wife is getting up. And then, especially this last album, which we could talk about, like obviously later in the podcast, but when I did my last album, it was the first album of mine that I did entirely like produced and made everything on my own. So I didn't make it at my friend's studio. I made it right here in my apartment. So I was just constantly in it. So it was like very late or early mornings rather. And then after that, I was just so kind of like defeated and I realized that I had kind of like lost the balance. And so once I was done with that, I was like, I got to recommit to getting up early and getting to bed a little bit sooner. And so that's what I've been doing now for the most part, for the last couple months since I wrapped up production.
I love that. And yeah, I'm sure we might dive into your creative process a little bit, but you mentioned when you moved out there and really started chasing music more. So I've gathered from some of your music, and I think it's in Feed Your Soul that you talk about a point where you're, maybe working a corporate job or something like that, but I don't know the story. So I would love to hear what your journey into this music career looked like. Is it something that you've always pursued on the side, or how did that journey unfold to take you to where you're at today?
Yeah. It's a long journey, so
yeah, it's a dense question.
That's still good. It's still going. So I guess I'll start with my full background because it all makes sense. So I'm originally from New York. I was born and raised on Long Island, and we can talk more about that in detail. But to answer more specifically your question, so I worked in the corporate world in New York. I actually worked in the news as a journalist and TV producer for 5 years. And that was really stressful. I went to school for journalism, and I was always into music, heavily into music and sports and everything, mostly action sports. And long story short, after college, I was in bands in college. I was playing all the time. My friends knew me as the guy who played music. I was I was obsessed with Jack Johnson growing up, being a surfer from the East Coast and everything. And that was what I wanted to do. And then once I graduated from college, really looking back, it was like it was really on me. It was a lot of things I could blame, but it was on me. I just kind of stopped playing within a few months after graduating college, went into the real world, and quote unquote, John Mayer, no such thing as it. So I'm believing that now. And, like I said, I worked in the news for 5 years, and I was like, I need to get out of that. And that's when I started dating my now wife, and she was actually the one who encouraged me to like apply for this other job. So then I moved to like environmental nonprofit, still in New York. And then I was like, oh, this is a much better lifestyle and around something that I'm much more passionate about. And I slowly started playing music again at that time, again, because my wife encouraged it. And that's when things started to unfold. That's when we were like, well, I think we really want to move out west. So let's try that. So we got married, moved out west, took a different job, to find a job in Arizona. We were going to move to Arizona or Colorado, and I ended up getting a job in Arizona. And I slowly but surely started to stop playing guitar again, and then I picked it back up, and just started working on songwriting again with no mission. And then it became really clear. I was like, wow, because I stopped playing for like 5 years after college. Like I didn't really get back into it. I guess like a few months before we moved from New York, I started playing. I played like a couple live shows, and then I was like, oh man, I missed this so much. And I started writing songs again for the first time in like 4 or 5 years. And it was just kind of this undulation. And we can go into plenty of details there if you have questions about that era. But without spending too much time on there, to really answer the bulk of your question, was like in 2017, my music started to connect with an audience. It took me a while to like really re-find my voice, because I've been playing and writing songs since I was 14 or 15. I've been playing music for 23. I started playing drums when I was 8. And so I'm just trying to get my timeline right, because I'm like thinking about how everything is like unfolded. So basically, in 2017, my music started connecting with an audience. Really, many thanks to the Phoenix yoga community, believe it or not, which you could probably gather from my music. Like, when we moved out here, my wife took her yoga teacher training. She's been doing yoga for probably a decade at this point. And at that point, she had not ever done her yoga teacher training, and she didn't really want to teach. It was just something she wanted to deepen her practice with. And I remember taking her to her yoga teacher training, like, because we had, at the time when we moved out here, we just had one car, and she didn't yet have a job. So that's when she was taking her teacher training. And I keep bringing that up because like, that's how I like met everybody in the community. And one thing led to another, and a teacher like saw me play guitar like on Instagram, and he's like, come play in my class. And nice. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, that's interesting. And one thing led to another, and then all these other songs that from a much deeper place like started coming to me. And then at the end of that year, then I played with a few like local teachers here, and one of them really took me under his wing, my friend Anton, and he introduced me to some festivals. And by the end of 2017, through collaborating with him and then booking some on my own, I booked like 8 festivals or something like that. And I told myself, I'm like, all right. And at the time I was working a corporate go to the office job, and I say that now because I still actually have a full-time job, but I work remotely. So I think
that's awesome to know.
But it took. So that's why I was trying to backtrack everything, because at 2017, I'm just trying to make sure I have my dates right. Yeah, at the end of 2017 is when I left, because I had booked all these festivals. Like, well, I don't have enough vacation days to like do that, and the first like 17 or 18 days of January, I was going to be like completely out. Like I was like in Hawaii for 10 days. And then I was in Texas and then Hawaii. So I was like, all right, the universe wants me to move forward. And my wife like really supported it. She's like, we'll figure, let's figure this out. Like, this is like always been your dream, and now it's like you've like recommitted to it, like we're gonna figure it out. And I had no idea, independent artist, like, and also like growing my following in a completely unorthodox way, mostly through the yoga community. It was like, and then things started to pick up like on Spotify, and then people outside of that community like really started to pick up on things. And so I was like, so it was hard for me to like, I didn't have any like connections within the music industry as far as like at the time, like, and still don't have many because of that, but like the art, other artists to like go on tour with, and credentials to show venues as far as like I've played here. Cause like I would go like and play at these like yoga events, but like there were a lot of them were like, there was well over 100 people in a city I've never played before. And then I can't, go and tell a venue, in Texas that like, I'm like, yeah, I've actually played with these people. And they're like, well, you've never played. I'm getting into like the weeds of things now.
No, but, that's all right.
But so long story short, 2018 then became like a really big learning year for me. Like, cause like 2 days off the bat, I got off, like a record company reached out to me, and then I ended up not going with that. And so, I'm a week into like my new life, right? And, kind of freaking out because I'd never had to like rely on my like my own job, meaning like I've never had to work for myself. That's right. What I'm trying to say. And I didn't really know how to do that. So by the end of the year, when I finished playing festivals, like I had like going through some like crazy like identity stuff, because like I was waking up every day like being like, why hasn't anything happened yet? I have like big names in the industry like comparing me to like Jack Johnson, like my idol, and then people that are close to you, and then even people you don't know, you're hearing emails from saying, they're like, you're gonna blow up, you're about to blow up, you're about to blow up, and then every day you wake up and you're not blowing up. And it's like it's kind of if you're not prepared for that mentally, it like really can derail you. And that's really what happened. And then I realized, I was like, well, I think I'm doing this wrong. Like, this is going to take way longer than I thought. Like I said, coming into that first week and like booking some big festivals and hearing from a record label, and then also other opportunities coming up, you're like, oh, I've got this. And then by August of 2018, I was like, I need to, my wife and I were like, we need to like refigure out how this is going to happen. So that's when I committed to, I was like, I know what I can handle now work-wise. I can't be in an office. So let me try to find like a remote job. And that took like 6 months to figure out. So,
sure.
Cause I was freelancing for a bit, but I'm really terrible at that. Because I'm not good at working for myself if it's not around music and the things I love. Mm-hmm. But, so right now I actually, I still work a full-time job, but I work fully remote. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity. Just because, it's tough in the industry to, just leave it all and do it. And, that was the big thing that was a really long answer here. Probably.
No, it's super helpful. It's super helpful to have the background and understand where you're at too, because I think that a lot of our listeners are going to connect with that, because I know with my entrepreneurial journey and a lot of the folks who are just getting started, it's easy to think that right off the bat, you're gonna hit strike gold and you're gonna be on your way. And I don't think anybody starts any journey of the passions with whether it's building a business, starting a podcast, chasing your musical dreams, with the belief that, this is going to take me, like everybody's optimistic who goes on that journey. And I know that when I started this podcast almost 4 years ago now, I was like, yeah, well, probably about a year I'll be quitting my job, some good sponsorships, probably a couple 100,000 people listening, and it's just, you don't know what you don't know. And the fact that you are crafting, you're still going after it in a big way, by the way. But you've crafted your life in a way that allows you to do that. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Tim Ferriss or the 4-Hour Workweek.
Yeah.
But it reminds me a lot of that, because a big piece of his theory in that book is, if you're working a job, shift to working remotely where you can do things on your time, and get the things you need to get done. And if you can shave time off and get to that, 4-hour work week, you have time then to chase your other passions and dreams.
Yeah.
So it reminds me a lot of that. And I think that for a lot of people listen to this show are starting podcasts and building businesses that way, or in a content-based business. And I really view that, we were talking a little bit before the show, as, an individual's artistic expression just in a different way. Like for me, I have zero musical talents at all. I mean, I want to learn the guitar, but I'm never going to be doing what you're doing. And so chasing my passion is, and creating art, is through this world of podcasting and finding my voice and sharing, my story that way. So absolutely. I'm curious for people like me or other folks who are listening who are really creating their art in more of this, how they're creating businesses and they view their entrepreneurial journey. What advice do you have for, and it might just be, what advice would you give to like an aspiring musician or artist? But what's your advice when you're in those stages where you're waking up and, you didn't blow up yet, and people are telling you are, and you're just wondering, why hasn't it happened yet?
My advice, whether it's music or anything else, is like, you have to ask yourself why you're doing this. And because if you can answer that with a smile on your face and just know the answer, like, you're in it for the journey. I know, and it sounds super cliche, but it's so right. And that's why it's like an ongoing theme in a lot of my songs is the journey. It's because it's a reminder to myself that no matter what, the best moments are going to be those moments in between the big ones. And it's almost, I look back at the tougher times, or I remember driving back from the studio when I was recording my first album and having like pretty much zero fans at that point, and hearing the rough mix of Adventure of Me in the car. And I remember like crying to like my own song, and not like, oh, the song's great, but like knowing, like in a happy way, like this, like if nothing else, like, we just created this, and I say we, and like my friend Eric who produced my first albums, he's taught me everything I know about audio production. That's why I'm like kind of able to do my own album now, is the people you meet along the way and the lessons you learn. That is the gift. And that's why I really like love the moment that I'm in right now, because I wasn't able to write The Fire in Me until I made, I came to terms with myself and situation. I was like, you need to like go back to work right away, or go back to a full-time job, because this is going to play out way differently than you think. And you need to drop your ego, and you need to realize that going back to that does not mean you're giving up your identity as a musician. Like, forget about identity. You need to realize it's going to help you push the ball forward, and it's going to, that you work better like that. You made like your best work while, I made The Calm Within my first album while I was, working that full-time office job. So I was after work every night, I would drive like an hour away to like my friend's house where I made that record, and I'd be getting back after midnight every recording night. And it was just like the best experience. I was like underslept, but I was just like so happy. And it comes down to those moments again, to like circle back to your question. It's like, it's not about blowing up. Like I'll have to answer that, if and when I get bigger, but, and check back with you and see if like my mindset is still the same. But I know I can just having glimpses of it and watching other people and really hearing about from other people that are in that situation rather, it's it's about those tougher moments, and not for the sake of suffering, but for the sake of the lessons, because that's what makes you stronger. And, you know, I tell myself this, I say, you know, the longer it takes, the more that I learn, the better I'll get. That's what I've been telling myself. And I really do believe that, because you know, if it all happened in the beginning of 2018 on January 3rd, you know, when I woke up on that Monday after the New Year, and I was just like, and it all just unfolded for me, like the fire in me wouldn't exist, because I wouldn't have had to like go back into myself and, you know, not to quote myself, but to just tell you like how lyrics would come through. It's like I wouldn't have to go to battle with my doubts and wage a war with my ego. Like that entire song is about that, and like that entire theme of the album is about that. And, you know, all that stuff wouldn't exist, and if it just keeps evolving from there, it's just this ebb and flow, and yeah, that's my long answer for people. And it's, you know, it doesn't have to be anything about music. It's you know,
yeah, that's applicable to life in general, and I totally agree. It's, if it happens quickly, you're never going to appreciate the eventual success. It's a beautiful answer, and I can't help but feel like this might be a good time to bust out a song if you're down for it. Whether it be the work or whatever you're feeling, man. But I feel like
is there a special one you want to hear?
I'll leave it up to you. I mean, we were just talking about the work, I believe, so that might fit well. But I feel like we'd be doing the audience an injustice not to give them a little something. And I have to say, hearing you tell the story, I feel like I understand the album on such a deeper level. Like, I already loved it, but now it's like, wow, I see where in Rob's soul this is coming from. It's so cool.
I appreciate that. Let me just tune this guy up.
Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, I'll do what I have to do live, and while I'm tuning, awkwardly talk over it. But so yeah, that whole album, like, you know, that's essentially the theme of the record. It comes from that place. The first song that I wrote from it is Whatever It Takes, and things kind of just evolved from there. You know, it was just about losing that fire, which I kind of lost after I was like, oh, this isn't going to work out. And like my old hard wiring of like, anytime things got tough, I would like give up. And I grew up doing a lot of different things. So it was really easy for me to give up, because I would just jump on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. I couldn't land a kickflip on a skateboard. That's right. I'll just go snowboard, or I'll go surf, and I'll get better at that. Oh, that gets tough. I'll just go do this. I was like, anybody who knows me growing up, my parents and everything, I'm like a king oscillator, which is great because I know how to do a lot of like many different activities and like skills at like a decent to really good level, not a master at anything.
Yeah.
And, but that's been like a really good thing for me. But as I get older, I have to realize that you have to really like niche down, especially as, you know, you've determined your passion and your purpose and your path. And it's easy to get distracted and go off of it. So I always tell myself.
I'm the same way. A lot of that, pretty good at a lot of things, like, but master of none. That's like the story of my early life. So it connects, and I think people hear from whichever song you choose, but throughout this album, that your music, I think will find, if it hasn't already, a very powerful place within the entrepreneurial community, because it does reflect, you know, that journey and that going deep within yourself. So super cool.
I appreciate that. So yeah, I'll attempt to play the work this early. It gets
all right.
I'm not singing higher, but nobody's perfect, so we'll go for it. Yeah, this one's called The Work. It's the first track on my new record, Fire Me. I go to battle with my doubts, wage a war with my ego. I try to feed the good and stop the evil. All of these things that I've faced before, they seem to come right back and ask for more. But I won't run away, away, away from them. 'Cause I can't hide from all the things that live within. So I will rise above the fear and let them in. And it's gonna hurt. That's the word. I keep reminding myself that I've got the key, and I'm the only one who can set me free. I can beat the demons and brave the storm, even if they manifest in another form. But I won't run away, away, away from them. 'Cause I can't hide from all the things that live within. So I will rise above the fear and let them in. And it's gonna hurt, but that's the work. It's gonna hurt, that's the work. It's gonna hurt, that's the work.
Ooh, boy.
Early morning version of the work. Here we go.
No, dude, that was incredible. Oh my God. That was a pleasure for me. I hope everybody else got as much out of that as I did, but thank you. I appreciate you doing that.
I forgot my guitar was in a different tuning, so it was a little higher up than usual. And I realized that after I committed to the song, I was like, oh, we got to make sure we get that morning voice out in an even higher key than I thought.
It sounded great.
I appreciate
it. And I'm sure I'm not doing with our own audio setup here, not doing it the full justice, but
it's all good. My favorite recordings were done on like Tascam, from like other artists and stuff like that. They're done on like 4-track recorders and like just a single mic setup, like
yes.
Mixer or something like that,
Yeah. So one thing that I just feel when that song's going is you have to commit. We've talked about this a bit, but you have to commit to the time, to the work that it's going to take to put in to chase your passions, your dreams, to make those things a reality. But what does that song mean to you? Where does that come from inside of you? Yeah,
it's about, we talk a lot about it in yoga, in meditation and stuff like that. You'll hear teachers and you hear them talk about, you got to do the work. You have to go through that. It's kind of what we were talking about before. You have to go through that hard stuff, your personal work, in order to grow. It's all about growth in life. It's really what it comes down to is like you should want to be a better person at the end of the day, the end of your life. And the only way to do that is to face all of your, people will say face your demons or whatever. It's really just face any of your hardships. Like look at you really face your character flaws, because we've all got them. And a lot of people, it's at the core of them, a lot of the same things. It's your doubts, and it all comes from your different areas of your ego. And I mean, that's why that's the top of the song. That's the one line I had before it. I just was driving my car one day, and I was just like, I remember going like, I go to battle with my doubts, wage a war with my ego. I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. Because every day, like, I have no doubt that all this plays out, but it doesn't mean that that's like that's my higher self talking, and I don't live in my higher self all the time. Nobody does. That's why we're human. That's why we're still here. And we're here to learn how to get closer to that all the time. You know, your good wolf or your bad wolf, that's your good wolf is your higher self. And, you know, that's that moment, like when you're in nature, when if you're, in meditation, or you're just when you're in your zone, you're usually most connected to your highest self. And that's where all that awareness comes from for me, is realizing that it all comes down to my doubts and my ego. Because even on like the greatest days, I'll just be like, how does this happen? Maybe I'm not that good. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Like, and most people, I guess more people it would be awesome if more people talked about that. And I'm not saying because I do all the time. I'm like afraid to do it sometimes, and until I guess write a song about it. But like I'm gonna imagine that affects people, even the most successful people in the world, like people we look up to is, everybody's
100%.
Because the minute you've achieved something, you've just reset the bar, even if something like we were talking about before, like if it did happen overnight, like not that overnight things happen for anybody, but if things happen really fast, you're just going to raise the bar much quicker. And you feel like you're in the beginning of like a different level. Does that make sense? So it's like you're constantly fighting with your doubts and your ego. And that's where that song came down to it. It was like, well, let's face it and put it out in a song, because that's where I do my best thoughts. And I am my songs in a sense where like that's how I feel, but I don't live in that higher me state. Higher me, not just the song higher me, but like that the entire mindset of like acting from your highest self that's what we're here to learn how to do in life. And I think it takes a lifetime or many lifetimes, depending on how you look at things. So
yeah. I completely agree with that. You talked about how you are your songs, and I get this sense of just vulnerability and transparency of who you are when you're playing your music. And I see that a lot within any kind of content driven world, that the people who can be vulnerable and honest and talk about the things like their doubts and their fears and their battles with their egos connected on a much deeper level. Have you seen that with your own music, that the songs that really are like a piece of your soul, maybe every single one you would say is, but are there any that like you really feel like you've poured yourself into and were fully vulnerable in, and those ones were more like the ones that really connect with people? Or I'm just curious if that's a trend that
no, it's so funny. That's actually been a recent conversation with my wife and I were talking about that. And I was also talking to my brother about that on the phone last weekend, as I'm preparing to do more stuff, like some new stuff. All my most popular, I mean, they all have elements of me, but my most popular ones are the most autobiographical leaning ones, or the ones that are more specific than more, I don't want to say vague, but something that skirts around in a top that talks high level about a topic rather than gets down to the detail. Like Adventure of Me is my most popular song, and it's like the verses are incredibly specific to my life.
Right.
Like it's literally about, to sum up the song, the verses are about me leaving, the East Coast, moving out West, how you miss that sometimes, but you realize that, you can miss something. That's the sweet spot of nostalgia, is like, and I read this somewhere on social media, so this is not my quote, and I forget if somebody was quoting somebody else, but it was something like, you can miss something but know that you don't want it back. And that's exactly like what that song I think captures, and I think that's the sweet spot of nostalgia. And because within nostalgia is your journey and your lessons, and it's good to look back and reflect on how it got you to exactly where you are, because that's where you're supposed to be. And then so yeah, to answer your questions, it's the songs that have been most specific, and I think The Work is in that category, even though I took a more high level approach to how I was going to write it out instead of like writing out something specific about my life. It was just something of way of me cataloging everything that was going on in my life. Cause like I said, like these songs are me when I'm in my highest self. And then I would say that like 80% of the time I'm not in that place. So it's a good way for me to like remember back on like where I want to be mostly and work on it. So it's a good way of cataloging that mindset and the journey itself.
Yeah. I think that concept of looking back and missing something, but not necessarily wanting to go back is, something we all experience, but it's hard to put words on and put your thumb on it. And you do a good job with it in your music.
Thank you.
If you could go back in time, and this is a question that I like to ask guests, if you could go and talk to the younger version of yourself, now knowing everything you know, gone through the journey up to this point, and say talking to that post-college version of yourself who's out there working in the news and journalism industry and hasn't touched a guitar in several years, is there one piece of advice that you would give to that younger Rob that based on what you know now?
Yeah, it would probably be something way more simple than I'd want it to be. You know, it would probably just be like, hey man, just pick up the guitar. Don't even work. Don't even just start playing again. Because otherwise I wouldn't change anything else. Yeah. I wish I had the industry knowledge that I do now. And I had the songwriting knowledge that I do now and all that stuff while I was in college, and I could have just had a seamless transition and maybe, but the industry was completely different then. Just even the last 5 years alone, like look how like Spotify has completely changed the way music happens. That's why I have a fan base now. So I wouldn't change that much. I wouldn't change really anything, because like, other than, just something simple like, hey, just pick up the guitar, because everything else led me to this moment. And without that, the lessons aren't presented to me. And if the lessons aren't presented to me, these songs I've never thought about it like that. My songs are kind of like my notes from the school of life. You don't remember everything. I could take notes. Like I gotta have a great teacher in school and I could take notes, but I'm still not gonna pass every test, especially if it was math. I was gonna get a 40 on that test. So it's like, no matter what, you have to keep. It's a repetition thing of like, you're gonna keep getting these lessons in life, and if I don't set myself up to have those lessons presented to me, then I don't have the experience that I have now. And I'm, as much as I want to be on tour with Jack Johnson or Trevor Hall and be selling out Red Rocks with just me and my acoustic guitar, a little insight into some of my goals. Like, I love that that's not happening right now. In a sense of that, I know that I've got a lot more to learn before that happens. Whether that happens next week or 5 years from now, it's just having that mindset. And again, it's easy to lose that mindset. Something can happen later today, and I'm just like, what? Come on, what? But you know that feeling when you're like, why is this not happening? I think
very well.
And it's so easy to read about other people and other artists and like compare yourself, especially like within your own industry, whether it's music or business or anything in between. And it's easy to be like, well, it just happened. Like that person woke up and then they were on tour with this person, and then like, how did they? But that's not the case. And you have to remind yourself that your journey is your journey, and that's what makes it special. Because it's the same reason why I tell people to like pick a moment in their life, like if they're a musician, like stop playing cover songs at some point. Like it's fine to play them every now and then, but like if you truly want to do this, like understand it's your journey, and just don't try to get better at singing somebody else's song. Like I know some other musicians get offended with that. I'm like, just like, meaning like, when people are only playing, like if you really want to do this, like see that as your life journey, like you really want to just like copy somebody else's, not that that's copying, but do you want to, Van Gogh, as far as I know, I'm not an art expert, but like he wasn't painting the same he wasn't copying somebody else's picture. He went and he inside of himself, he said, how's this journey going to play out? And if those people don't do that, if you don't do that for your own life, how do you carve your unique path? And the thing is, like, you don't even have to try, you just have to be yourself. And that's the easiest, it's most simple advice. It's not easy, actually. It's the most simple advice, but it's the hardest thing to do. And kind of going on a tangent, but I think it's all related to just, you have to surrender to your own journey, but understand that you're in charge of a lot of your own decisions by the act of being able to respond to the things that happen to you. And that's where the lessons come in, just to bring it to the circle.
I love it. I mean, it's a rant worth having. That's for sure.
And this is me like reminding myself. It's almost as if I'm talking in the mirror. Like, I have to remind myself this stuff, not even just every day, like every hour, every 20 minutes.
Right.
You know? I could pick up my phone and go on Instagram right now and see 3 things in a feed that are going to completely derail me and be like, how is that artist opening for that artist? Like, like that's not, I love to see other people succeed. That's that not even dormant, but like ego underneath the surface that it's so much more powerful and more hungry than that highest self mindset. It's what's constant. You have to realize, like, you know, life's not as, you know, then you tell yourself lessons. You're like, oh, my Long Island accent almost came out there. It happens from time to time. And, you know, you tell yourself, you know, life's not a zero-sum game, and it's like, it's your own journey. Like all these things that seem so cliche, but it's like you're telling yourself that because like the lessons are going to keep showing their face in life. They're going to keep coming to the surface until you learn them. And nobody learns anything on the first try. At least nobody learns anything that's worth shaping you, you know, in the first try.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. This whole podcast is my entire shtick is that I'm a student along with the listeners, and we're just learning from some other folks and trying to figure it out together. And even when I, you know, have a solo episode or do a Facebook Live or anything like that, I just did one talking about this topic exactly of, you know, not comparing yourself to others and celebrating others' victories and just said, by the way, I fail at this every day. And this is just, you know, when you're living your higher self, this is how I try to live. But you're right. Nobody's perfect at it. Everybody has to remind themselves of these things. And it's so true. So Rob, you've got the new album out, The Fire in Me. Where can people find you? Where can people check out the music if they, you know, the song you played, Connected, your whole message, everything you've talked about is right up their alley, which I'm sure it will be. Where can people find you? Yeah,
you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but I don't really use Twitter that much anymore. At Rob Riccardo, and that's Riccardo with 2 C's. I always have to tell people. ROBRICCARDO. RobRiccardo.com. And same thing, just type Rob Riccardo into however you get your music, and the music is everywhere digitally. You can get it these days. It's, you know, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube. The list goes on. There's like, I don't know, there's dozens of places overseas that different countries use different platforms, but you know, it's everywhere. And I'm pretty much constantly releasing music, and there's more new stuff coming. And Fire Me just came out on August 2nd. It feels like it was a year ago, because I recorded the work first. It wasn't the first song I wrote for the app, ended up on the album, but I wrote that song last November. It was one of those, it took like 20 minutes. Sometimes the songs just like come through really quick. Sometimes they take months, and this album has both ends of that spectrum. But I recorded that song like I remember it was like Christmas week, so it was like quiet around here. It was nice. And so for me, that album feels like the process started like late December 2018, and I was just so in my head, I'm already, you know, so what I'm doing next is I'm actually going to take something I wanted to do for a while with the album is record an acoustic version.
Nice.
Just literally just set up 2 microphones and vocal mic, and then one on my guitar, and do the entire album, just almost like studio live acoustic. And I'll just be recording it right here in our apartment and capturing that. I had two of my like favorite artists have done that, something like that. And I'm like, I'm gonna do that for this record. So I'll be doing that actually tomorrow.
Nice.
And I'll probably just chip away at a few over the next week or so, and then that'll be out in the fall.
Well, dude, I'm pumped for that. That sounds like some good fall tunes to jam out to. Rob, we'll have all your music linked up in the show notes here. Dude, thank you so much for the opportunity just to connect, hear a little bit more about your journey. It's been awesome. I love what you're doing and appreciate everything you're putting out in the world.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, would you mind doing me an enormous favor? Could you drop a quick rating or review right there in your Apple Podcasts app on your phone? It helps so much in growing the show and helping more people find it. And when more people listen, we get better guests to come teach us cool stuff. It would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week.